Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to spend this morning chatting to a friend of mine, Jason Gurd. Jason is a well-regarded facilities management consultant. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you. That's very kind.
We wanted to just have a bit of a chat. I know Jason has some good views about things that are happening at the moment. So I'll kick off by asking you, Jason, how are you finding the current situation of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's thank you, Peter. It's really interesting. We're seeing sort of so many new things come out, new ways of doing things. It's really kind of shaken up our industry and how we're working and how we're thinking about stuff. But we're seeing a lot of new regulation, a lot of new guidance, a lot of innovation, particularly around how to do that. And we're finding ourselves in a really kind of dynamic situation at the moment where FMs really have to kind of keep their finger on the pulse. And it's kind of to the stage whereby you can answer a question about something on Monday, and by the middle of the week, the answer has changed because the guidance has updated and changed and that sort of thing. So we're learning a lot as we go. But actually what's been quite interesting for me, I think, is just how robust some of the stuff we already knew is turning out to be.
Yeah.
So, particularly our sort of good risk assessment principles and health and safety cultures and things like that. Those are really kind of coming to the fore, and we're really kind of, FMs are kind of rediscovering risk assessment and kind of how they manage their risk and rediscovering sort of some of the processes around that stuff. And it's quite interesting for me to find that although we've got a lot of very new kind of responses to the COVID pandemic, we've actually been able to respond within the frameworks that we already had and that we had before. And it's really kind of energized our thinking about how those work and kind of solidified them within our minds, I think, which has been fascinating.
Sort of recalibration, I think, in all regards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did, a couple of weeks back now, I did a webinar with where we were talking about sort of the risk of COVID, and I brought up the risk rating grid, which is the sort of 1 to 5 likelihood and severity rating, which most health and safety professionals are very familiar with. And I asked everyone on the webinar to rate what they thought the risk was at that time. And at the time it was, the alert level was 4, and almost about half of them actually under evaluated the unmitigated risk level, which was really interesting to sort of go back to those basic principles and kind of understand actually we need to kind of look at these and, within the tools that we've got, it's a new set of risks, but we've got old mechanisms for dealing with those, and they're quite good, quite fit for purpose.
So my second question for you, Jason, is what are the opportunities for FMs in general and the facilities management sector?
Yeah, this is an incredibly exciting time. FMs seem to be sort of falling into one of two categories. There are those that are either completely rushed off their feet at the moment, or those who are kind of twiddling their thumbs a little bit, kind of looking around for things to do. This is a superb opportunity for a bit of investment, in ourselves and in our processes, in our systems. FM has really been kind of shoved into the spotlight like never before. We're really talking to people at very senior levels across the business. They're understanding what we can do for them. We've had the opportunity to be responsive, proactive, and really kind of get to know them and get to know their needs and present ourselves well as professionals. And now's a really, really good time for us to take that to kind of the next level and say, okay, so let's look ahead at what we need for the future, but also let's look back and sort of see what we've learned. Something really interesting I've been talking to a lot of people about recently is business continuity. So we've just gone through a BCP event for most of the country, and now is a time when actually a lot of people would just be sort of taking a big intake of breath and sort of sighing, mopping their brow and saying, oh, thank God that's over. Yeah. But actually, if you really wanted to seize that opportunity, now is the perfect time to do some lessons learned on that, to refigure what we've done and how we've done it, into developing our BCP plans, because the last sort of BCP event has been quite heavily state supported in terms of funding and legislation and things like that. Our next BCP events as businesses might not be so fortunate. So now is a great time to say, well, let's take what we've learned, let's see what we can apply it. You know, there's an opportunity now to sort of, to sort of perhaps apply some of the ISO standards 22301, some of that learning, so that you can actually develop a really robust system. And it's not as complicated as it sounds. It's simply a case of, you know, learning our lessons, applying it, trying to make changes so we can do it better in the future. So that's one thing. We've got a great opportunity to reevaluate our services and things like that as well, and think about how we're delivering those and what we really need to deliver. Rethink about the needs and the wants for our customers, and see how we can apply those too. So plenty of really good opportunities. And and for FMs personally, of course, particularly those who are not that busy at the moment, now is a brilliant time to get up to date with your CPD, to do a bit of learning, to do a bit of training, to read around the industry. The amount of webinars on interesting things that you can go and look at the moment is absolutely huge. So make sure you do that, but also record it. Make sure you've got a record that you've done it as well. So really good opportunities, I think.
Information overload. I mean, I know I've talked about this before, but there is so much out there, and I think it's a case of tuning into the ones that sort of can benefit, because I think you can spend a lot of time looking at stuff that potentially is not the right, but I couldn't agree with you more. There is so much stuff out there. A lot of it is free, and yeah, as you rightly said, it's an absolutely superb time to upskill and be ready for obviously when this ends. So the question that is on everyone's mind: have we seen the end of The Office?
Yeah, wow. I tell you what, if I'd had a pound for every time I'd been told that we'd seen the end of The Office, I'd have retired long before the pandemic kicked in. Yeah, I mean, people keep sort of telling me, oh, well, look, you know, we've got the tools and we've got the technology now and that sort of thing. And the first time people sort of told me, oh, we've got the tools and the technology, I mean, I think it was about sort of 2008, 2009.
The Lehman Brothers thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a new thing. I think what we've seen is we've really seen a reinvigoration of thinking about The Office. Like the idea that The Office has ended is some really great clickbait, and it makes some fantastic headlines, and it's very provocative and that sort of thing. But actually, after several months of working at home, a lot of people, I think, have come to rediscover what The Office actually means to them personally. Yeah. We all like to work from home. We all like to have a day where we're nice and productive and we don't have the commute and that sort of thing. And sometimes that's sort of 2 or 3 days a week. But I think the vast majority of us realise that we get a lot more out of the workplace environment. You know, it's about culture, it's about innovation, it's about learning from your colleagues, that sort of casual interaction and things like that. And I think whilst it'll be tempting if you're finance director to be looking at this empty workspace that we've got right now and saying we could make a really good saving there. I think in reality, the workplace brings so much more to the experience of doing work. And what FMs really need to do now, I think, is take a look at that, look at those workplaces and say, well, actually, let's not take them for granted anymore. Let's not assume that, you know, that it's just somewhere you go into Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 and spend a certain number of hours. Let's have a real talk about what it is you're going to be doing in there and how we can help you do it, and how we can make best use of those spaces. So I think there's a huge amount of change coming for the workplace. Yeah. Absolutely massive, but I don't think we'll see the end of it in my lifetime, to be honest. I really don't.
You don't think we'll see the end of the discussion, or you don't think we'll see the end of the office?
Oh, either. I think there'll always be a need to, you know, to meet physically with people, and you know, virtual water cooler chat is just not quite the same as actual water cooler chat.
No. I don't know, it's the emotional side that sometimes you can't pick up on a video that is just missed. I mean, from my personal perspective, coming back to the office, to get that sort of interaction, to get the idea generation that is just, I don't know, maybe a bit dead when you're doing it online. Oh,
I've spent a great deal of my working career hot desking, and I've always loved hot desking because it puts me, it mixes me in with people that I don't normally work with from around the business, and I get to, you know, you overhear bits of conversation about things that are happening and things that are going on, and it sparks ideas, and all of a sudden you're like, hang on a second, can I just talk to you about that, because I'm working on something, or I've got an idea for how we can, you know, and you just can't replace that remotely. That's the gold dust. And I think, you know, well, look, I think as a good example, if you look at some of the big technology companies, the companies at the forefront of information technology and media, they, you know, they, if anyone, have the technology for everyone to work from home. And yet, over the last couple of years, they've been seriously investing in their workplaces to make them places that their staff want to come to and want to spend time. And there's a reason for that, is because, you know, they've cottoned on to the idea that there is an innovation and there's a cultural value to them coming in. You know, your likes of Google and Facebook, etc. You know, they've invested very heavily in their offices, and you think, if anyone's going to say, well, we've got the technology not to do that now, it's going to be the technology companies. So I think, whilst it's tempting to say we've seen the end of the office, I don't think we have.
Yeah. How do we convince the finance directors about everything that you've just said? I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I've just taken loads of notes. really insightful. But, you know, how does the FM community sort of win that argument?
Well, do you know what, actually, sometimes the funniest thing is, so I once had this conversation with a finance director, and he was sort of saying some things about how the office was and his thoughts on how heavily occupied it was and what was going on and that sort of thing. And I said to him, I tell you what, if you've got 5 minutes, come take a walk with me. Yeah. And we walked around the rest of the office, and I showed him the bits that weren't immediately in use by his team and weren't being used for activities that his team was involved in. And he got a completely different perspective on just what the workplace was doing and how it was being used. And I think sometimes that's the easiest way. You know, you can tell people all you like, but just show them. You know, just have a walk around, talk to them about it, and point out what your thoughts and your plans are.
Do you personally feel more productive working in an office, or do you personally feel more productive working from home?
I like to mix it up. I'm a real activity-based worker. There are activities that I really enjoy doing from the coffee shop, activities that I love doing in the office, and some that I can really get on with at home. And what gets the best out of me is having the flexibility to choose my working environment based on the activities I know that I've got to complete. And I think that's what I'd always like to do for my customers, is try and say, well, look, we'll provide you with a range of spaces that, that are suitable for the different types of activity, and how you use those spaces and interact with them should depend on what you've got going on. So if you've got no meetings, and you've got some stuff that you really need to concentrate on, stay home. But if you've got meetings and things like that come in, we can accommodate for that. We can flex for it. So
I've read lots of things recently, actually, about the idea of commuting to the office to then sit at the desk, to then have your headphones in all day and not speak to anyone. Just those days are gone, aren't they? I mean, that just seems absolutely sort of...
Oh, it's madness. But on the flip side, one of the things we've learned in this pandemic is that those days we had working from home, where we were extremely productive because we had no meetings and we could just kind of crack on and concentrate for 5-6 hours, they've been broken up by 3 or 4 hours of Zoom calls and and team bonding and things like that have kind of intruded into those. So so we've we run the risk when we work from home of actually losing that productivity. We're not as productive working from home as we used to be when we were doing it 1 or 2 days a week, and we could change our schedule round to suit.
That's true. I didn't think about it like that before. It said the working from home model is had to change, hasn't it, really, in the last couple of months?
Absolutely. And when I work from home, I've conventionally sort of, sometimes I'm working from home, sometimes I'm working from the garden, sometimes I'm working from the coffee shop. It's I'm very rarely sort of static in one fixed location. Much the same as when I go into the office. I work from a desk, I work from meeting rooms, I work from the breakout area and the restaurant. I move my my work location around, and I think flexibility is the key. It's about having the choice and to be able to use the space you want.
That's great. Jason, I've really enjoyed talking to you. This has been one of my favourite ones, actually, and the topics we've covered are just so relevant to what the future's going to hold. Hopefully the FM community can win the argument with the finance team. Let's hope that's the case. I mean, my personal view is, I think potentially some organisations are going to need a bit more space to accommodate for the social distancing, but it's just a question that no one knows the answer for at the moment. But it's certainly a very interesting one that's at the heart of many conversations that are currently happening. So thanks ever so much for your time, Jason. If anyone has enjoyed the conversation as much as me, are you happy for me to pass on your contact details?
Absolutely, be happy to chat.
Great, that's fantastic. Well, thanks again, and I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Peter.